On behalf of Rosefield Energy Tech, I would like to welcome all to the webinar on boardrooms and ESG, the long-term impact. Rosefield Energy was founded with the key objective of bringing all stakeholders in the energy and electric vehicle sector together to participate in responsible decision-making and to assist enterprises in improving their sustainability performances. With the climate crisis looming over our heads, it becomes of the utmost importance to understand concepts like ESG and to do our part for a greener future. In the last webinar of the series on ESG, we looked into understanding sustainability implementation, Indian regulatory framework, global ESG framework, and the interoperability of ESG and Indian BRSR. For today's webinar, we have another ESG expert, Mr. Sridhar Ramachandran, who is going to talk about the broad ESG framework, 5 ways to value creation through ESG, and why boardrooms need to have an oversight on ESG. Mr. Sridhar Ramachandran is a management strategy specialist and comes with over 30 years of experience in general and financial management of companies across Asia and Africa. Currently, he serves as advisor of India Nivesh Renaissance Fund, a turnaround fund in India catering to small and medium companies. He represents his funds as nominee director in listed and unlisted companies. He has held leadership positions in different roles, including Alpen Capital, Cadila Pharma, Briscon Corporate Advisors, and many more. During his career spanning over 3 decades, he has successfully turned around few companies, worked with many visionary entrepreneurs, and interacted with more than 1,000 promoters across various sectors. He speaks at various industry forums on strategy, finance, and governance areas. He serves as an advisor board member at Mentor My Board, Muktagan, an educational NGO, DAA Consulting, and Impact Tree. Welcome, sir. I now invite Ms. Kasturi Bhave, co-founder and chief financial officer, Rosefield Energy Tech, to have a conversation with Mr. Ramachandran.
Thank you, Anuja, and welcome, Sridhar, sir. Environment, social governance, ESG, is about making a difference to your business, society, and the world while ensuring a more sustainable business environment around us. ESG is not just an intent, but planning every aspect of your business to achieve tangible results around climate change, diversity, culture, risks, and more. To discuss how, as business leaders or entrepreneurs, you can bring this change, I welcome Sridhar. Sir, let's begin with the basics. So, what is ESG, if you can illustrate briefly? I think it's on mute. Hello?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And how does it bring value to a company? And does it mean additional cost or does it create a value to a company?
Thank you, first of all, for inviting me to this session, and I'm glad to be part of you all. And thank you, Kasturi and Anuja, for nice introduction. And Rosefield is taking a great initiative in this ESG segment along with the DAA. I'm happy to be here. Good afternoon to all of you. And I hope after the lunch, you don't sleep off. So I will try to keep you awake. And let's see how we learn and interact with this session, which I'm going to be specifically talking about from the boardroom perspective, right? So Kasturi, can I have the presentation so that I will take it through? Yeah, great. So first slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah. Now I've always heard some jokes about environment, right? When people joke about environment, I was in Indonesia in '94, and one of my CEO, I was a finance head of a large business. So the CEO used to come, he's a British guy. He used to come into the factory he will first get into a peek into the gutters of the drainage system and all of that. So in fact, when we used to have lunch, we used to say gutter manager has come. At that point of time, having brought up in India, where this was never, gutters were running around all around us when we grew up in certain segments of the society. And we used to make mockery of this CEO. Why is he doing it? And today, I am talking about how it is so important. It starts from the gutter. So environment starts with the gutter, and then we have our Prime Minister talking about Swachh Bharat the day he took over, as a Prime Minister. So we have a huge obligation to our society, because it is not for us alone. We are going to create this environment and sustainability for the future generation to come. Our kids, our grandkids, and so across the world. It's not now anymore restricted to one country, Asia or Africa. Now everybody needs to get into this mode. So with that small introduction, ESG is a new buzzword. Everybody is talking about ESG. Now, environment, when we walk into a factory, or you are invited to somebody's house for a dinner or lunch, what is the first thing we do? We go inside and we get very happy when we see some nice looking pots and flower pots and all of that inside the house. Or when you walk into a factory, we see beautiful garden being maintained. But it is not all the time the same experience we get. When we walk into half the factories, I've visited more than, say, 500, 600 factories in my life, and half of them do not even have the biodiversity. They just manufacture, sell, collect. So these are some of the things which hits you today when we talk about ESG. When we sit in the board meetings, the financials are presented, the CFO says, this is our cost that has happened. The board of directors will say why the power cost has gone up compared to last year. Okay. After that, the CFO or the person who is responsible, he will give some excuse saying that we operated more generator, whatever it is. But very rarely the board gets into the detail of how this power cost has gone up, why, how it can be saved. Now coming to social side of it, right? Because now ESG is a comprehensive concept. We are not going to separate CSR or human resource management and all of that. Now, if we comprehensively, ESG is a concept. So social aspect of the business covers most of it. When you look at the board, very rarely, unless there are very beautiful companies too who look into HR policies and all of that. But many times we don't even ask the HR manager, can you explain the process when you advertise for a job? Do you ask for gender equality or preference? Are you going to give equal opportunity for differently abled or whatever it is? We are ignoring that function almost. We have always treated HR, though we tell them they are HR, but we treat them as a personal function, right? Now, I'm talking from the board level. Now, this is happening. I'm not saying this is happening in the best companies. We have 5,000, 4,000 listed companies, plus we have another 50,000 unlisted companies. Now, it happens most of the board meetings, we don't look into this aspect at all. Similarly, suppose a set of 5 people walk into the CEO room from the manufacturing side. They say, sir, we are not getting enough clean water. The water is not cold enough. We are sitting in a warm temperature. The CEO immediately thinks, oh my God, we have a union formation, right? Without realizing that it is a concern that they have raised. This is how the unions also came in those days. But then now last 10, 15 years, those traditional activities of union has come down, but the concerns of people are more important today, right? Similarly, when a customer reacts that I have a product problem, our immediate response from the marketing department will say, no, sir, our product is accepted by all the customers, so many people buying it. We don't have a problem. Maybe you did not use it properly, right? Without looking into the details, right? This is another important area where processes needs to be set in. Look at the examples of increment, promotion, how many times the board gets involved in terms of the succession planning, grooming, and how we are going to upskill them for the jobs that is going ahead, how the future strategy is mapped with regard to the human assets that are part of it. I've always considered human as employees are assets of the company. In fact, when I was in South Africa, I introduced the concept called no more HR. It is going to be Human Asset Development Center. So this is another important area where we have to spend a lot of time, and I will tell you why all of this is becoming much more necessary, right?
Right.
How many times we see fires in buildings, in factories? Many of the fire extinguishers may not be even refilled every year. Hydrant line may not be working, or that water which is stored in the hydrant line may be used for something else. Safety goggles are not available. People don't put on their gloves. Lift maintenance is not done. So on a regular basis, we observe this, but we are so used to such inefficiencies, we are not able to demand attention and raise an alarm for it, right? Only when an incident happens, everybody will jump for a week, whether it is media or the company board, sacking few people, all of that will happen. But this is ad hoc measure, which is not going to be sustainable in the long-term basis. Now, let's come to the next aspect, governance. You take board independence. Now, we all know, other than well-run companies, 90% of companies whose board of directors are not independent. They may say they are independent. Most of the time, they are either related or known to persons or having some ulterior interest in whatever they are doing. You take, I'll give you a classic case in Future Group and Amazon Reliance case. After 2 years of dealing with Amazon signing that agreement to buy their, investing into Future Group, suddenly independent directors wrote to SEBI that this agreement is null and void because they did not disclose it, right? Now the question comes, if you are an independent director, you went through the agreement, and why today, after 2 years, we are talking about it? Of course, people have logic, they did not give the real intention and blah, blah. But I'm talking about board independence here, right? You take business ethics. You take ICICI Bank, what happened with the Chanda Kochar and Videocon. It's ethical issue, right? Take DHFL, basic intent, ILFS, Yes Bank, Cafe Coffee Day, right? And now the recent issue is the the NSE, National Stock Exchange. Come to compliance side, right? Most of the companies want to fill up the formats and be happy with that we have complied with it. But you look at it, complying is not the end of it, right? Intent is very important. You are not disclosing it promptly means, for recently, last 1 week, I have seen 2 cases. When Reliance sold its stakes to in Jio to Facebook and Silver Lake, they did not disclose immediately, and they were fined, including the company secretary and all of them, right? And recently, last week, Kotak Mutual Fund again was fined because some of the investments were done against loan against shares instead of a pure mutual fund product. So these are all the things which are not complying to the standards, right? Then comes the executive compensation. Now, I'm putting these examples so that we are able to understand where the board is going to play a big role. Eicher Motors, we all know, and Siddharth Lal turned around Eicher Motors as a MD, but shareholders rejected his increase in salary. And you take Apollo Tyres, vice chairman and FD. Shareholders rejected 42% increase you are going to give this man, and finally he accepted 30% less than what he was getting, right? So it is another big issue when it comes to a governance matter. Shareholder democracy. Now, nobody really thought something called shareholder democracy, right? Shareholders, they all invest, whether it is retail investor, financial institutions or institutional investors. Now, suddenly, how many institutions have questioned the proposed resolutions of many companies, right? They've invested. We have had classic cases many times. LIC, so many other institutions invest, even mutual funds invest in large companies. But many, very rarely, they ask questions. As long as they're happy that the performance is okay and then share price is looking good, they kept quiet. But today, shareholder activism is playing a very important role. Recent case, which all of you know what happened with Z, with Invesco, and they said we would like to call an extraordinary general meeting because and they want to remove the MD of the company. And it went to legal case, and finally it was allowed that yes, shareholder who is holding more than 10% can call for a EGM. Now, this is a new phenomena in the last 4 or 5 years in India. In the West, it has been existing for at least 20 years, shareholder activism. There are cases where large M&A transactions have been vetoed by shareholders activism, right? So broadly, ESG covers much, much larger. In fact, it has become a holistic angle for running your company, right? Now, can you go to the next slide? I will look at how do you people. Kasturi asked me a specific question: is ESG a value addition, or is it or is it a compliance issue, or it's a hindrance? Now, if people are able to visualize what can it generate over a period of time, a simple example: if in a family somebody is behaving good, and right from the young age they are given good value systems and good education, they turn out to be good citizens of the country. At that time, we did not question, why do we have to do all this for this child? Similarly, in a company, there is a famous saying, all of you may be knowing: the day we incorporate a company, it starts decaying, right? So it is like as soon as we are born, our days are getting counted, how many years you want to live, right? So we have to think from this perspective, and to keep it sustainable, we have to do real workout on a regular basis, keep your diet under control, and practice all the good things that you want to do to elongate your life, is what ESG is all about. Now, how can we quantify it? Because right now, everybody is talking about BRS standard, and earlier it was BRR standards. People are going to be fined if you don't do this, that, and all that. But I will tell you, top line growth is the first objective which will be achieved. You know why? I was in apparel business in Indonesia and Hong Kong. When I used to send my coats to my, say, whether it is Marks and Spencer or DuPont or Polo, first question is, we will first do your inspection audit. And that audit, factory audit, they will ensure whether social, environmental, governance practices are adhering to the international norms before they even entertain your sample. I had one very specific issue. We had a factory in Sri Lanka. And when I got to my office at 8:30 in the morning in Hong Kong, I had a lovely BlackBerry email showing, Sridhar, we are fining you $10,000. And the reason was they found the scissors in one of the cartons, which was received by my customer Polo, and it was picked up. $10,000 for a scissors which was mistakenly put in the carton. And this is the extent to which people can go for complying to their standards. Of course, we did investigation. The lady was holding the scissors in her neck, in her tag. When she bent down to close the carton, it fell down after metal detector. Normally, all these cartons go through the metal detectors. But after the metal detectors, when they seal it, the scissors went inside. And in 10 years, we have never had such an issue. And one fine morning, you get a $10,000 debit note. In fact, they said we could have taken you high penalty, but we have had never issue for that 10 years. This is the first incident. We still want to debit you with $10,000, right? So customers will not come to you. We may think I have all the great relationship with customers, but the customers are also under trouble. So today you want to supply to Tata Motors or Mahindras. They are not going to look at it just because you are able to produce and sell it to them at the cheapest cost. They want to ensure that you are a vendor who complies with all the norms. Forget balance sheet analysis, whether you are positive, negative, whether you have reserves, and whether you have the working capital. They are looking at it more and more important. So going forward, this is what is the pressure is on everybody, from vendor selection to supply chain management. The moment you fall into good compliance, good standards, and implement them, you will have a good growth coming. Secondly, cost reduction. Now, cost reduction, I gave an example of a power bill, or people will be talking about solar or renewable energy for a long time. Earlier, they talked about, sir, how much subsidy we will get, how much tax relief we will get if we put this. Now, most of the windmills were created in 90s and 2000s, keeping tax benefit in consideration. But today, those benefits are no longer there. It is a necessity that you have to reduce your fossil fuel based consumption. At the same time, we will address whether it is all hunky-dory in the Western world. Last week, Europe said we have to restart our coal factories because Russia is not supplying gas. Okay, so that's a trade-off. But the more and more you spend and you reduce the cost and put instrumentation machines at every level to reduce the cost, as we always say, every dollar saved is dollar earned. Regulatory changes, right? Now, you took at, we see on a daily basis how many companies are getting penalized by Environment Ministry, right? Plants get shut down overnight. You take, for example, Amara Raja Batteries, one of the large listed companies. They are under show cause notice and the stay order, and that factory, a large factory in Tirupati, is being issued a show cause notice to close down, right? Take what happened with the Vedanta Sterlite, right? After running the company for 20 years, that factory is shut down. So we have to be very clear that all these things are catching up on a daily basis. Now look at productivity side, right? Now employees want cleaner air. They don't want to sit what your father sat in that factory sometime back or in an office. Today, employees want a good environment, a good coffee machine, good water dispenser, good toilets. Now, it's a demand by the employees. It does not matter whether they are skilled, unskilled, or they are IT technologists or working in administrative office. Everybody wants good parking space. If I bring my scooter to my factory, I should have a parking space, right? So it is all going to be driven. All this will motivate the employees. They don't have to worry. And if they have a group insurance, if they have insurance, people are going to look at it. If I fell from COVID, somebody is going to take care, and the company is reaching out to me if I need any help. So I had a situation, in a very funny situation in Indonesia. The sexual harassment policy in India, we are always talking about women's sexual harassment policy. I had a very funny situation where I was in that company. Suddenly, the head of a department came to me. There is no distinction. Night shift also, women work there because women are employed more than 50-60% in Indonesian textile and garment factories. So two guys came and said, "Sir, don't put me in night shift." I said, "Why?" "No, I have not gone home for, I am not able to work." I said, "Why?" "These three girls are harassing us in the night." Now, these are funny situations today when we think about it, but it is not sexual harassment from one side. It has happened from other side and I'm talking 20 years back, right? So when you put all these policies in perspectives and implement them, employees feel very comfortable and safe so that their productivity goes up, right? Next comes your major issue, investment and asset optimization. Today, if I have to convert my coal boiler into biofuel or a gas base, it is going to cost additional, say, 5 crore, 2 crore, whatever, depending on the capacity, right? But if I do that today, my yearly cost is going to come down. And this is resulting in major sustainable saving that is going to happen in the company. And people today do not realize it. Of course, I pity the MSME segment where they are struggling for day-to-day working. So to do all of that, they'll say, we will see next year. We will see next year. Intentions are there, but they don't have the means to do it. So, which I will show you in the later slide, how these are helping out such companies, right? Can we go to the, I'll tell you, okay, go to the next slide, please. I'll catch up in the next slide. Now, today, funds are flowing into companies which has got ESG compliance. We are talking billions and billions of dollars. Even in India, if I think many of us are investing it in mutual funds. You know, today, when you go into 100 mutual funds that are available, Aditya Birla Sun Life ESG Fund, Axis ESG Fund, ICICI ESG Fund, Kotak ESG, like that, there are 10 different ESG funds have emerged in the last 1 or 2 years. 1 year, most likely, I would say. And these companies, these funds invest into ESG compliant companies. Now, today, your stock price example may be languishing, even though you have good fundamental operations and all of that, because stock market is very different. I never link stock price into company's performance. Ultimately, at some point of time, it will reflect, but I am not a knee-jerk player where, every day this happens. But if your company is ESG compliant, and these mutual funds hitherto have been investing in companies which are giving high stock return, they will move their funds towards ESG compliant companies. Automatically, your value will go up, and that's a long-term sustainable value that you can see. Okay, next slide. Now, this is a classic example how 50 ESG investments outpace benchmark Nifty index. Okay, 50 investments have been done, and according to this data, which is published, it is includes TCS, HCL, Mahindra, Asian Paints, various companies. They are achieving at least 20 to 30% more than the market return. This classically shows, because Kasturi started with asking whether it is a beneficial. Now, this is a long-term benefit people are appreciating, and there is a value that you have to derive over a period of time. So take this from this perspective, that we are in a situation that ESG cannot be taken it as a pure compliance matter. It is a long-term sustainable matter. Next slide, please.
So before we move into the
Yes,
next
please.
slide, we have seen there's so much beneficial, and ESG, I mean, when we start with it, we think it's just environment. I think from what you have illustrated, it is much more than environment, right? How a business is governed, how they take care of their employees, their customers. I think this is much more. And this will ultimately lead to benefit of the business in the long term.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And how can a board play a role in this? And
that's a great question. In fact, if you remember, corporate governance standards by SEBI or by Companies Act were delegated to company secretary. Of course, board was very conscious of the corporate governance, right? Similarly, when it came to CSR, again, CSR norms came in, and people were compliant, and they formed various committees in CSR committee and all of that, corporate governance committee. But today, when it is going to become mandatory, or it has already become mandatory for first 1,000 companies in the listed space from FY23 this year onwards, it has become comprehensive, right? There are very good companies who had done a great job even in the past also, even without any of these compliance regulations. So I will talk about it. Now, why boards need to have oversight of the ESG from a legal perspective, right? Now, typically, Indians, 90% of the Indians are happy to follow the law, and they are scared to violate it. And unfortunately, since independence, we have been driven by certain thought process by the government. If I don't bring the law, people will cheat, right? So there is a basic issue of trust factor between government and the citizens, whether it is individual or a corporate citizen. The fact remained there was a trust deficit, right? In the Western countries, they trust the citizens. I give you, you come and file your own returns, you pay your taxes. Unless there is some difficulty, or challenges, we will not bother you, right? Similarly, now a situation has come where there is a self-discipline, self-regulation is important. The Companies Act 2013 came up with this section 166. What it says, a director of a company shall act in good faith in order to promote the objects of the company for the benefit of members as a whole, not shareholders, and in the best interest of the company, its employees, the shareholders, the community, and to promote environment, protection of environment. Now, in 2021, Supreme Court, in one of the cases, have decided and penalized, if I am not mistaken, the board of the directors that you have not protected the environment. Very rarely this has been come into that right to the apex court. So it is very pertinent that we cannot ignore this word, and for the protection of environment. Before Companies Act, we already had, Pollution Control Act and Environment Act. So we used to get notices, companies used to get notices whenever there were issues, and they used to manage it. And directors were not held responsible. They will be, put some penalty and give them some notice and correction mechanism and all of that. Now, what is happening is it is going to affect the directors at the board level, right? It is not only independent directors, even all directors. Independent directors can have some reprieve if they are not part of any such decision making for such failures, right? Now, similarly, go into director duties, section 166(3). A director of a company shall exercise his duties with due care and reasonable care, skill and diligence, and shall execute independent judgment. Now, you see the word skill. Now, I spoke to a few people in the last 1 month. When I asked them, sir, ESG standards are coming, even practicing chartered accountants or MDs of companies. Sridhar, what is ESG? What is BRSR? Now, when the Companies Act says you have to have the skill, upgrade your skill to manage the affairs of the company in a proper way, you have no choice unless you get into the details what is required. So it is again, another section says you have to upgrade your skills. So ignorance is not going to help you. Now, duties of disclosure. Now, I'm giving in 3 perspectives from the company law perspective. One is we discussed about the director duties of trust and loyalty. Then compliance as a skillful compliance. Third is disclosure. Now, in annual report, directors sign the report, or somebody signs on behalf of the directors, which has got, directors report, corporate governance report. Then you have management discussion and analysis, all of that. Now, all of that is disclosing a lot of information which needs to be absolutely factual and truthful to the nature. Again, section 134. You have all these responsibilities on the directors. Now, when the BRSR standard comes in from this year onwards, you are going to sign it off, and you are going to look at this data before you sign it off. When you look at the data, I will show you at a later slide what is important in the BRSR, which is going to happen. So duty of disclosure is also becoming very, very important. Then comes next slide, SEBI LODR. Listed companies are obligated to report few things, like your corporate governance report, right? Can you go to the next slide, please? Now here we are looking at to adhere to BRSR, the companies need to not only disclose ESG risk faced by them, because this is Risk management. Many people discuss risk management, supply sources, and all of that, but risk is much, much larger, right? But also mitigation strategy, financial implications of the same must be reported. Second, sustainability goals of the company. So again, today, sustainability is another big buzzword, right? ESG, sustainable, is overall aspect of ESG, because if all of this implemented, the company is sustainable, right? And what are the sustainable goals of the company, which is including environment related issues, greenhouse emission, waste management, and how much biodiversity you're doing. Then you have to respect workforce, how many people, gender diversity, social diversity, inclusiveness, and welfare mechanism, training, development, and CSR. All these things are part and parcel of this comprehensive BRSR report, which again, I would have to commend SEBI for bringing such a very comprehensive format, which keeps into account of entire GRI standards in the world, right? So this is a SEBI regulation for listed companies. So I've talked about Companies Act, I've talked about the SEBI regulation, right? Let's go to the next slide. Now, third area we have to look at it, litigation risks. I've talked about it, how many people Environment Ministry can file, Pollution Control Board, but also public interest litigation is going to come in a big way, right? I'll give a classic example of a case which happened in one of our interested companies. The castor oil is the raw material, and the tank, after unloading the castor oil in the the big tank at the factory, the lid was not closed immediately. There was some gap. By the time the fellow climbed up 20-30 feet to close that lid, by the time there was a peacock which came and stood there and fell inside the castor oil tank. They noticed immediately, they pulled the bird out, but castor is high viscosity and very difficult. They were washing and all of that. But remember one thing, peacock is a national bird. Whether it is a national bird or not is a different thing. But national bird is even more important, right? Immediately, environmentalists came up and said, oh, why within the 10 minutes you did not call the animal welfare department? Why not we take action? And all of that happened, in a small factory, which happened fraction of a second. By the time the fellow went to climb to close the lid, and the peacock comes and sits and falls inside, right? Now, this can happen in a public interest litigation, and we are seeing it on a daily basis. Now, Green Tribunal, which is coming up with a lot of action. The last one, there is a new provision, class action suits by shareholders, section 245. If 10% of the shareholders or a certain number of people feel that the company is not doing the right thing, they can bring a class action suit against the board of directors, against the company. So I have covered broadly Companies Act, SEBI, and normal litigation risks and shareholder class action suits. Okay, go to the next slide, please.
Various different reporting, but then as businesses, as board, we need to know how to conduct the business, right? When there is an intention, but there has to be a process to follow, so we ensure this compliance.
See, absolutely. Now, these are all, I am not saying it is a threat. All in 95% of the companies want to run the business well with the objective of making profit. There is no doubt about it. Nobody wants to run a company badly to sink it, right? So that is not the objective here. But what is additional responsibility coming? How am I doing that business in an ethical, moral, and governance ways? Which is where all these factors come into picture. So legal issue is one, compliance is one, but it all starts with the intent of the board of directors and the promoters starting with. Because governance at the end of the day is at the heart, not in some some legal English drafted by Oxford dictionary. We need to face the reality that it has to come from your heart. If we have to correct ourselves, we will correct and make a sustainable business. Now, before I get to, broadly we discussed the legal requirement for the board to get involved on ESG. Now, how are they going to get involved? Now, again, they came up with 9 governing principles, which is very, very encompassing principles. Actually, what is happening is, when I used to study in Chennai, I used to have one class called theology class. I don't think it is any longer there in any school, theology class, where they will teach you what is right and what is wrong. It is nothing to do with the religion or any of those things which I'm talking about. Basically, it is theology that we're talking about. Today, if you go to 9 principles, what are the 9 principles here we are talking? It is basically, first principle, business should conduct and govern themselves with integrity and in a manner that is ethical and transparent. I discussed already about various cases and governance issues. Business should provide goods and services in a manner that is sustainable and safe. We have seen product recalls and various things, and we need to have a sustainable. You can't produce a product using all that is banned, right? Now, today we are saying plastic ban and all of that. So this is becoming a sustainable business model. Third, you should respect, promote, and well-being of the employees, which is covered in one of the principles, and the entire value chains, right? If the employee is happy, his family is going to be happy. As simple as that. And the productivity will increase. Everything has a cause and effect relationship. Then it should have respect for the entire stakeholders. Stakeholders, we are now not only shareholders, it is community, it is vendors, it is your employees, and so many government also, right? And we also should respect the human rights. Now, this is something becoming very, very important. I will tell you a small incident that I confronted when I was in South Africa as a CEO. One of my companies, in South Africa, we had apartheid, where there is a differentiation between whites and the blacks and the Indians and colors. So the black human resource manager, white human resource manager made a comment. On one particular day, he doesn't speak to the blacks because his brother was killed by a black. Now, this is a racism statement. The entire factory went on a strike for 2 days, and I stepped in as a neutral person to resolve this issue. They were wanting to be violent and want to go to the extreme end to finish the personal manager or the HR manager. You will not believe, after I stepped in, they saw me differently. I am neither a South African, a black, nor a white. I was in between from a foreign country. And I spent 1 week with the unions as well as with the management of that white member team. And we resolved this, and this is not going to happen anymore. And I'm happy, even as the latest last year, I found that HR manager is still working in the company, right? So it is basically, you have to respect the human values and all of that. So this is a classic example. I'm talking way back in 99, 2000, which I saw in South Africa, right? Business also should respect and protect the environment, restore the environment also. So we have talked about environment. Then we have to have engaging, influencing public policy and regulatory policy, so that in a responsible and transparent manner. Now, this is let us get into a little more detail. When engaging in influencing public and regulatory policy, you should do it in a responsible and transparent manner. We have seen some frivolous complaints. Somebody will complain because they don't like that company being next to you, or some other vested interest will come and come behind you. But all those things have to be taken into account. You can create a big halagulla about particular issue without realizing what is the ultimate objective you are trying to achieve. So this is something businesses, when they are in association members and all of that, these associations have to take a cognizance of the overall aspect of what they are trying to influence. Say, for example, we are reading how Bangalore roads are flooded, and Bangalore has got the venture capitalists, the best startup, the best IT companies, and everybody comes on the TV. But I will always say, why these business leaders never bothered to sit with the government over the last 10 years Bangalore is the cosmopolitan city and it is having the poorest infrastructure. Why don't they do it? Because they are taxpayers. Corporates pay huge tax to the government of, whether it is a state or a central government, right? Now, this is where the responsibility comes in for the board of directors. You can't come into a TV show and then say, oh, government is not doing this, but you are a $3 billion company sitting in Bangalore. Why could you not influence the entire community and the government, right? Similarly, business should promote equitable development, right? We have one of these standards which we always talk in management discussion, the median pay difference between the CEO and the top management to the lowest. Now, we always see, of course, there will be median average wage will be about, say, 10 lakhs per year on an average for a person, but the other person will be 110 times more because of CEO. But ultimate objective is to bring that equitable development. It is not that you're going to pay the CEO salary to the lowest end of the segment, but there should be equitable development that should happen, right? And lastly, provide value to their consumers in a responsible manner. Say, for example, Vivo has been in India supplying mobile phones, and I would say 20% of Indian lower end of the consumers must be having a Vivo phone. Today, entire management is vanished, right? Now, where is the consumer gone into picture? Finished. You did something, and today Vivo will not be in the market, right? So with that, these are the 9 principles I would like to highlight, because before I finish, because I have very, very less time, and the 5 more minutes before we get into the question answer session, right? Next slide, please. Okay, I don't want to get into this format. Basically, what it says is, in the BRSR standards, the board, basically the format says, the statement by the director, whether you have policies of all these things governing, whether the policies have been approved by the board, whether the web link is being made available, whether the entity has translated the policy of the procedures, then whether it has been communicated to the chain partners, whether it is complying with all the standard, all these statements, directors are going to give a certificate. It is a management and procedure process disclosure. So this is an example of one particular section. So this shows the importance of the board that needs to get involved, right? Next slide.
An extensive process that will have to be followed.
Of course. And all the 9 principles, 1, 2, 3, 4, you see until 9.
Yeah.
Okay, now coming to the important section. What is the reality, right? We are still not BRSR standard compliant yet, because it is a new law which is coming into effect now. But BRSR standards have been there. NSE did a study on 50 listed companies in 2019. What did it say? Everybody had their policy. Beautiful policy was communicated, whether it is environment or every year. In environment, 30 companies do not even have a clean development mechanism. 11 companies have no biodiversity. Only 14 companies reported sustainable sourcing. Only 21 companies reported about packaging. Most companies reported decrease in energy intensity. 15 companies increased renewable energy. Only 7 companies reported decrease in water intensity. Only 6 companies reported carbon emissions intensity, right? Coming to social. Workforce least focused area, data security, health, safety across as well as individual company. Very poor equal opportunity employer across companies. 185 sexual harassment reported by 30 companies. Data security, consumer orientation, no uniformity in reporting. Governance, women directors, we had 46 companies. Only 11 companies disclose risk management policies. With the poor attendance at meetings by the board members, poor board remuneration to women directors, 50% of companies reported tax disputes. 14% reported qualification in their audit report. 6% reported inadequate data on related party transaction. 20 companies have disclosed specific information regarding its training program. Balance did not report. Okay, so
Good picture of ground reality.
This is the ground reality, right? But life is about hope and optimism. And when India is going to be the future growth in the whole world, I am of a strong conviction and very, very hopeful in the next 10 years, 20 years, India is going to lead the growth in the world. But that growth cannot come without looking into holistic aspect of environment, social and governance mechanism in place. Because after 5 years, let me tell you, when you recruit a person today, your HR should be told, recruit a person who understands whether he is switching off power in his home when he is not there, or when he is washing his legs, is he using faucet shower, or he is just taking 2 buckets of water and pouring it down. You know, the values have to go down to that level. Whether you are recruiting a pantry boy, the pantry boy, ask him to show how he prepares the tea. You will see he will open the water tap. He will be leaving it open until he takes the vessel and put it on the induction stove in the office, and the water will be going. Now, this is the level I would like people to be recruiting onward. It should start, and it should go right from top to bottom, bottom to top. Right. Next time, I will tell CEO, don't go anywhere when you visit a factory. Go see the drainage if there are mosquitoes. Go see the toilet. Today, you would not be called a gutter manager, which we called in 1990s, right? And there are good companies, I'll tell you. Go to VGuard, go to Wellspun India, read their reports, beautifully captured BRR, right? There's another company called Astral. They prepared separate sustainability report, beautifully captured. But many numbers are not giving positive signs of a sustainability strategy because it is not reporting. Every year, what is the action have you taken? What strategy have you driven? What is the benefit you're getting it? Are you monitoring it? Do you have the data mechanism capturing it, right? And you go to a company like Aarti Drugs, they're a pharmaceutical company. You will never see much talked about this BRR standards, right? So these are real life situations. I think revise your risk management committee charter to cover ESG, do a materiality analysis, do impact assessment, change your recruitment, which I have told you, appoint a sustainability head. Because today, Mahindra Group has got a chief sustainability officer. Now, nothing will go past him if there is investment going on. What is the ESG element in it, right? So you need to have somebody made accountable, not that all board of directors on a daily basis, but evaluate the risks and implement policies and procedures, then monitor it. I am always saying it is an oversight by the board, and they cannot absolve their responsibilities in ESG. With that, I thank you. Next slide. If at all, I wrote a book called End of Samba Dance. It's a ambitious businessman ending up as a criminal. Will his greed be undoing? This has got a lot of issues and environment and all of that. If any of you want to read it, please go ahead and read it. And looking forward to the review. Okay. It is a financial and a business thriller.
Wow.
Now I'm done with my presentation. Sorry, I took 5 minutes more.
No problem.
I am available for Q&A.
I'm sure all our audience will be interested to ask questions. Yes. I request the audience to type in your questions in the Q&A section of Zoom. We'll take the questions one by one. So till our audiences, we get audience questions. One question I would like to ask, like we discussed, the board has a huge role to play here, right? And you also mentioned a lot of skill set that will be required for ESG compliance. So what kind of ESG professionals will be required? I mean, do we have any qualifications for ESG professionals?
Today there is going to be shortage of professionals from this angle. Now, I have seen there are some people who are getting the certification for training a lot of such ESG professionals, and this business of training is going to be very important, and companies should use such outsourced services so that they train their own people, and you create trainers so that they can train the rest of the company. This is a huge problem right now because people are inundated. You need knowledge of engineering. You need, somebody has to understand social background. So you need to understand what is going on. You understand governance. You cannot get all the skills in one person, but you have to create a team.
So this in fact implies more business opportunities for for various different departments
I
to
know.
help comply with the ESG.
Right. I have one question which I see, how different are these 9 rules in comparison to the guidelines of UNPRI? Now, at the end of the day, if you compare any guideline, these 9 principles is what how a business is run and how BRSR standard is evolved using GRI standards. Now, I don't want to get into detail how different, but these 9 rules are mandatory and we have to follow as a company here. I don't remember exactly all the other guidelines of UNPRI.
One interesting question, with ESG, there's always a talk about energy being used, oil stocks. So oil or energy stocks versus tech stocks. How
Yes.
different is ESG investing?
Yeah, see, stock investment and investment into any of these companies is going to have suffer people who are in who are not ESG compliant. Take for example, Coal India, right? Its share value is always does not increase because many institutions will walk away because they don't want to encourage such investment anymore. But can we get rid of Coal India and the coal and suddenly become a renewable energy source for feeding India? Not yet. I said already that in Europe last week they decided because gas is not supplying from Russia, they are going to restart coal factories. I mean coal boilers. Now you cannot have standard which you preach to the world as long as it was working for you. Today you cannot take a stand. So I will not go to the extreme end. Investment will reduce in companies which are not ESG compliant. That is a fact. Tech companies who are promoting such ESG standard disruptive technologies, definitely it will be helpful. Rajashri Sai has a question.
Yes. So Rajashri Sai is
What of the data on ESG? Yeah, I'm reading that question. Secondary data sources. So greenwashing could be a concern across the world. So do you see companies wanting more primary data source integration in terms of financial investor? Do you think ESG funds are doing something differently after BRSS standard? Is it status quo? Now,
I'll reread the question.
Greenwashing. Yeah, I think this is a comprehensive question she has asked.
Rajashri Sai is asking a lot of data in ESG from different sources. So is greenwashing?
She says it is all secondary data right now.
Right.
She is asking a question that they're all secondary data. So greenwashing could be happening. Yes, greenwashing, we have seen it across the world and in India more so because not only India, many of the developing countries. Just because there is a compliance, you engage some beautiful English writers to write your annual report. Now, all of them will use beautiful English, but real data is not coming properly. And many companies have not even the system to monitor the data. So primary data is utmost importance. So technology is going to play a big role. Companies would like to, there may be software companies will be developing this ESG data platform, which will be implemented along with their existing ERP system. Or people, I read last week, SAP is putting a lot of money. Oracle Financial is putting a lot of money in integrating ESG as part of their software system itself. So that will be a triggering point. And as financial investors, of course, we are looking at it differently. Even in our own private equity fund, out of 7 companies, 2 or 3 companies are already into environment friendly. It is not even ESG. One is a oleochemical, one is saving entire water system, one is a technology company which is going to provide for the government and other people a lot of resources. So this is going to happen on a regular basis, and it is a reality, and investors are going to look at it very, very carefully.
There's another question from anonymous attendee.
Environment engineering. How can I navigate my career into ESG consulting and reporting? Yes, I think you have a great future in India. There are big fours who are trying to do this ESG consulting. but the skill levels are yet to develop. There is going to be synergy that is going to happen from the knowledge base from various sectors that can come in, but no company is going to give you 100% all of that. You have to get sources from different angle and put it together for your own consulting company.
Next question we have is, do you think in India compliance is more driven by commitment or by force? Very
I will tell
interesting.
you, first it will start with force, then it will become a commitment.
Right. Another question, how do companies that perform better ESG wise also
I
perform better?
I showed one slide where they were outperforming the Nifty.
Absolutely. I have another question on integrated ESG reporting. I mean, with various reporting standards,
Yeah.
how can we do integrated ESG?
Now BRSR is enough. You don't have to give separate CSR report. You don't have to give separate, human resource report and all of that. Everything is now. I want everybody to spend some time who are keen in this BRSR. Phenomenal report has been prepared. Template has been prepared with clear direction. What is the strategy? Everything, and this is going to be a path-breaking approach by the SEBI and the Companies Act, and both are going to implement it. And you'll watch. First year, they will report. Second year, you can monitor what happened. Did they take action? Third year, if they don't, you will see them, their stock prices going down. I can tell you 100%.
One thing that we see is right now the compliance is restricted for bigger companies, right? So how do small, or rather MSMEs, work towards ESG?
Yeah, see, today it is 1,000 companies by market cap, but I will tell you, in the next 2 years, all companies, whether listed, unlisted, everything is going to come into the purview. Maybe they will give some liberalization for very small companies. I would always urge, don't go by what is required as a compliance. If you want to remain in the market for a longer period of time, do not take it for granted. These are not important. Pay attention. I am not saying you should have 100 agenda in the first year. Take 2 agenda, take 3 agenda, start looking at it and formulate policies. Put 2-3 people, monitor, is it happening or not? I think make small steps, and I will tell you, in 2 years' time, you would have made a lot of efforts. You would have made a lot of progress. How can funds that promote?
Very. Another question from Rajashri. So in future, do you see the companies as per recent amendments do any impact assessment?
Yeah. See, I will tell you, BRSR is also having one of the template, which is your score. What is your score? Now, there are companies who are coming into your validate your BRSR standard and your data, and they are going to give you ESG score. Now, this has to be published. Now, this is, you go to Welspun India, and Welspun India has a separate section for ESG score, how they are rated, what is their policy, and how external rating is coming in. This is going to be happening regularly.
I think we'll take last 1 or 2 questions.
Are you seeing companies looking at CSR and section 135 definitely after BRSR? Now, when you are looking at a holistic thing, nobody is going to look at it separately. Everybody is going to look at it together. Companies will integrate it.
Right.
Any other question?
There's another question from Prasad. Where can we get list of companies who are ESG compliant?
See, it is mandatory from this year onwards, but I gave you some example. Go to VGuard, go to Welspun India, and as you look at these companies, they are already doing a lot of work.
Right.
get the list of companies who are ESG listed. This is mandatory from this year on.
So now at end of the financial year, when they disclose their accounts and reports, we'll also get the ESG report.
Company which widely seen as responsible. Now, as much as will hate oil companies and all of that, first we have to make our citizens live before we get into second level, right? Today, if you do not have electricity at home, can your child study? It cannot. Without your car or a scooter, can you travel? No. All this have to be taken and balanced. So you will still continue to have oil, you will still continue to have coal, but our responsibility is to reduce the dependence over a period of time. Thereby, we protect the environment and the climate. How can funds promote sustainable development which are widely seen as responsible? I think I have answered it. It has to be done, but it cannot be done overnight.
I think these were the questions. Audience, if you have any more questions, do write to us at info@rosefieldb2b.com and we'll take them up with Mr. Sridhar. Yes, I think we are also completing our time. So thank you so much, Sridhar sir. This was indeed an insightful session with a lot of different aspects about different live examples that you gave. So I think this is not just ESG is no more just a compliance, but what companies do for their future, for their environment, for the society, and remain sustainable in business. Like you rightly said, we cannot stop using a car or stop using electricity, right? But then how we do that effectively. So even right from increasing efficiency, we can just start one step towards ESG. I think circular economy is another way through which energy will be reduced. We will be better able to use resources. So we are seeing circular economy in plastics, metals, even oil. So ESG is such a wide topic. So I'm sure the audience will.
Yeah, you can't restrict only to plastics and all of that, because every day in, day out, we do a lot of things which we don't like we take earbuds. Take an earbud. Earbud is plastic. We just use it and then just throw it.
Correct. So that is again one-time use plastic. It becomes various aspects of ESG.
Yes.
So thank you, sir, for highlighting, of course, giving a board perspective. And we and the audience will love to have you for another round. So I'm sure we'll have another topic soon coming on ESG. Thank you, audience. Do let us know any specific aspects on ESG that you are looking to learn more about, and we'll have few more webinars coming in the ESG series. So do let us know. Do share your feedback. Also take this opportunity to thank you, everyone. Thank you to the key speaker today, Sridhar Ramachandran. Thank you, my team at Rosefield. HPCL has always been a big support to Rosefield. So thank you to HPCL. And thank you to the lovely audience for so many questions and for your interest in ESG. Do watch this space. Do follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. And watch out for various ESG webinar series we are coming. Thank you once again.